Hi, everyone. Welcome to Career Conversations. I am Meera Jogasundram, and our guest today, Pamela O Hanlon. She is a leadership development specialist, and she's responsible for taking leadership programs from concept to delivery, completing all the steps in between, such as pricing, purchasing, logistics, administration, invoicing, content development, and facilitation support. She provides customized service to every client on each of their projects, whether they range from 2 module courses with 20 people to 9-month leadership programs with 100 people. Pamela is a driven and ambitious person, and she is sure to inspire and engage you with her invaluable insights. I can't wait for you to hear what she has to say. Hi, Pamela.
Hi, Meera. Thank you. Nice introduction.
You're welcome. It's the truth. How are you feeling today?
I'm good, thanks. Good today. Happy Saturday.
Okay, that's great. How's the weather there in Spain?
We've had a rainy week, which has been very welcome, actually, because our water reservoirs are very low. I don't know if you've heard that in the news, but Spain hasn't got a lot of rain in the last 2 years. So while it doesn't suit the Costa del Sol, it's necessary because otherwise we have water shortages in the summertime, and it's good for the plants.
Okay,
Good for the
you're
swimming
looking
pools.
bright and cheerful despite the rainy weather.
Yeah.
Tell us about your career journey, Pamela.
So I've had a very mixed career journey. I think I'll start back at my degree because that was sort of the starting point for everything. Maybe that makes sense, but in some cases people go off on another tangent from their degree. So I studied Spanish and psychology in University of Galway in Ireland. It's a 4-year degree because when you study a language, you need to live 1 year abroad in the country of that language, which for me was Spain. So in 2004, I came to study Spanish here in Malaga, did my psychology on the side, went back to finish my degree then in 2005 in Galway. After that, I actually went to America for a few months just because, get out of the way, 4 years of study and travel and get to know another culture. When I came back, I kind of dabbled in a few different things, like a bit of teaching. I wasn't that clear what I wanted to do, as a lot of, 21, 22-year-olds are. And I did some teaching, did some voluntary work. And then in the end, I just said, I need some career guidance. So I actually went back to my university and went to the career guidance office, asked them for some ideas and just some direction. And they told me about this program where you could do a remote postgrad, but also get employment, so paid employment. It wasn't an internship, with an Irish company that generally worked also with a company abroad, which meant I could use my language skills. So I applied to that program. There was normal round of interviews as if it was any other job. And I got into the program, and the job was in marketing. So I hadn't studied that, but it was my Spanish that got me in there, and I hope my personality. So it was in Dublin initially, and the university that offered the postgrad in conjunction with that program was Dublin Institute of Technology. So it was international business development, which is actually funny because it took me a whole probably 10 or more years later to be in that field, but it was my initial postgrad. When I did that job, it was 6 months in the Dublin office in marketing, and then 6 months in the Madrid office, because it was a drinks company, and we had distributors in Spain. So, for example, Irish whiskey, and it was being distributed by a company here called Osborne in Spain. It was supposed to be 6 months, and I loved it so much, I asked for a few extra months. So I stayed 8 months in Madrid. Again, it was marketing, but, you know, whatever they needed from me. I did some tastings, you know, led some events just to promote the brand here. When I went back to Ireland, at that point, I had also finished my postgrad. It was a series of assignments online. So I would just work late at night on that. Went back to Ireland and did a few more months in the Dublin office. But I had always wanted to go to South America because I had the language, and that country, that continent was open to me. You know, all of the countries, it was easy for me to travel in, potentially work in, and I had a longing to do voluntary work as well. So I could have continued on my nice, safe trajectory of, you know, marketing assistant, and probably moved up the ladder in that very solid Irish company. But I gave my notice in April 2009. Much to their dismay, they were like, why are you throwing this away, you know? So one of my tips to young people now is just don't stay with something because it's safe. You know, if you feel like you need to get that out of your system, go and do it. So I went to South America for 9 months. I started out in Venezuela because I had met a friend in my company in Madrid. So a colleague and friend, she invited me to stay with her in Caracas. I have a cousin over there who's a missionary priest. So I did some voluntary work, completed that box for 4 months, and then took off with my backpack around the whole continent in a circle.
Wow.
So yeah, ticked all of them off: Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, back to Argentina, and then I flew home 9 months later. So when I came back, I was still not sure what I wanted to do. I think that's probably the most recurring challenge I've had in my journey. So I went back to voluntary work again because I want to keep busy, even if I don't know what I want at any specific time. I think that voluntary work gets you out of the house, gives you a routine, and you meet people and you learn something. So at this point, I had gone back to my hometown in Ireland, where I had studied and everything. So I volunteered at this local Galway charity. It's called Cope Galway. And mostly the volunteers are needed in fundraising events. So after only 2 months, they actually offered me a job. And I guess I've been lucky in a lot of places in my life as well. I am just doing something, and then somebody comes along and there's an opportunity. And I don't know if it's 90% work and 10% luck, or if it's 50-50, but it's worked out for me. So I accepted to do a fundraising assistant job. And I was there for probably a year and a half. And it was actually love that made me stop that job, because I met my now husband for a second time because I'd met him on Erasmus in Malaga. And he was working at the time in the Netherlands. He works in medical devices and pharmaceuticals. So he had to work for a week in Dublin, and we met up just because we had always stayed in touch. We started going out again, distance relationship, you know, it can only last so long. So I actually decided to give a try to the Netherlands, life there. The job was stressful, as anybody who has ever been in, you know, charitable fundraising events. It is challenging because you're not selling a product to somebody for their benefit. You're hoping for their philanthropical side to come through, you know. You're not like giving them something in exchange for their money or their time. It's just from the goodness of their heart. So that's a challenge. But it was wonderful and great experience. And then I went to the Netherlands. Didn't speak the language, didn't know anybody. I was living with my boyfriend for the first time in a studio apartment. There was a lot of challenges. So because I, again, just wanted to do something, I took a job in customer service. And while I wouldn't say every job I've had has been enjoyable, everything teaches you something. And what I feel is the most thing you get out of travel or jobs that maybe are just not right up your street is empathy. So for me, traveling to all those places, it's not just, travel for the sake of it. I try to learn from the cultures, and then it makes you stand back when you're with other people and say, okay, I have to understand it now from their point of view, from their upbringing, from their country background. So in the Netherlands, I did the customer service job for a few months, but I knew that I could do more with my education and myself. I took a few months out to study Dutch, because the Netherlands is a country where you don't need to speak the language because everyone speaks amazing English. And I actually got a job again in an NGO, which was called the European Centre for Development of Policy Management. That was amazing, an amazing place to work. I was in an environment of 65 people, probably from 30 countries. We had an office in Maastricht and then another office in Brussels near the European Commission. We worked with a lot of African countries. It was very diverse, a super enjoyable job. It was not just executive assistant, because you were brought into lots of other policy development topics, and you were writing tenders, you were writing papers. Well, in my case, checking papers, not writing them, but editing papers. I was producing a magazine. Wonderful, wonderful opportunity. Again, family things came up, and we decided to move from the Netherlands to Spain. My husband is Spanish. And in 2017, we came to Spain. So I had to leave that job, unfortunately, because we had not lived through COVID and nobody worked remotely, or at least it wasn't that common. So I would have liked to have taken that job with me, but it wasn't possible. So I came here, and actually only after a few weeks, I met a very good friend of mine, she's now a very good friend of mine and colleague. He said to me, I think you'd fit in well with our company. Just going on your experience, and if my boss will take a chance on you because you're based in Spain and the company's in the UK, we might see how it works out. So that's the company I still work for as a freelancer now. I started out initially as an employee, and now I'm freelance. So that was 2017. And I started out as a project coordinator at the time, with a small team. I was taking over from an Italian girl. So I just took on her clients and her projects. So we are a leadership development company. So I suppose that was taking from my executive assistant experience. It was in a different field of leadership development, which I hadn't studied, but I could definitely do all the logistics and admin part. And over the course of the last, I guess that's 6 years now. Yeah, 6.5 years, I've grown from project coordinator to project manager, which is project manager was more than taking on being in the calls about content. Project coordination is when we just plan trainings for clients. Project management is when you then really understand what the client is asking for in terms of designing a program. And with the pandemic, actually, we had to take all our trainings from face-to-face, as you probably know, to virtual. So I was very involved in that transition for our company, because nobody had done that before for us. We had never had Zoom sessions. So I studied all I could about Zoom meetings and Zoom webinars, and we trained ourselves up as virtual producers to help our trainers in the online environment. And because I did a lot of virtual producing, I was hearing sessions now, because before that I had never traveled to the face-to-face sessions, because I was the project coordinator and later the project manager. But if you're not a facilitator, you're not paid to go to the training, So then we went back to face-to-face. Now we do a hybrid mix of deliveries, both in country and online. And just last year, I also went into the field of delivery, because I have amassed such knowledge now about the content because of producing online workbooks, e-guides, videos, and just meeting our clients in person. And it's been quite holistic, because I always can put myself in the participant's shoes, and how would they want to learn something, as opposed to coming from the training background. So that was a really long answer. Sorry, I'll let you talk.
No, no, no. It's like I felt as though I was traveling from one country to another, then back to that country, and then to another country. Now, before I ask you my question,
Mhm.
I'd like to say hi to Tracy Lawrence. She
Hi,
says,
Chris.
glad to join you. Thanks for joining us, Tracy. I'm so glad. I know Pamela is glad as well.
Yeah, nice to see you.
You have made so many transitions, right? And
Yeah.
when you describe them, it's almost as if they are seamless, right?
Oh, that's good.
Actually that's the impression I get. How have all those transitions impacted you?
um, I suppose the transitions, I'm glad they sound seamless because they definitely weren't in real life. I think that they made me have patience with myself, with the environment around me, but they also pushed me to keep learning. And I'm not a person to stand still, as you can probably guess from the last answer. Um, I don't know if I can, put that in a nugget, like the impact it's had. But I think for me, it's also just every time I do a change, so I'm exposed to customer service, right? And I never had done that before. It wasn't something I particularly desired to do, but I did it because I had English and they needed English people to serve the UK and Irish market and also the Spanish market. But it made me really empathize with people who do that job. And if I'm now, for years since, if I'm talking to somebody, in a call center, I'm so kind to them. I'm a polite person anyway, but I'm probably kinder because of that experience, because I worked in it and I know how tough it is. And I know that you can't hang up from a disgruntled customer. You can't call your manager. That's a real thing. You cannot put the supervisor online. They don't allow it. It was the first time I also couldn't ever use pencil and paper, and I'm a real pen and paper kind of girl. I can do all these online things, but I love writing and I love, taking notes. So even just small things like that, like, wow, people just have to use like a screen and they cannot even have a pen on their desk. I think the impact is just later in social situations or work situations that you're just kinder. Don't know if I answered you well.
No, sounds like you have a very good understanding of the perspectives of different people in all
Yeah,
the different jobs that you've had. So you tend to be more understanding, you tend to be kinder, like what you said. And that is crucial, isn't it, for human interaction, especially in a
absolutely.
professional working environment.
Yeah, and now what I do is people leadership. That is the theme, and under that we design sessions. And when I'm hearing managers saying, I don't know how to have a conversation with this person, and I'm like, there's no barriers. Just be yourself. Maybe for me, coming from a small company, so I've never worked in big multinationals. My husband has that experience, and I'm still astounded when he tells me how many, staff his company employs because they're a big pharmaceutical company. And maybe I don't have that advantage of that experience working in a company of thousands of employees. Probably the biggest one I've worked for is 100 to 200. So I've never really seen a lot of the hierarchy, or if I have been exposed to it, it's never really affected me. So I think, yeah, I would be respectful, but I always think you should be able to still talk to somebody at a human level. We try to humanize leaders in our sessions and humanize the business environment, because at the end of the day, if the people can't be treated like people, then you're not going to have good teams. If you don't have good teams, they're not going to perform well. If you're not performing well, the company's not going to make money, you know? So the people are the core of it all for me. Maybe I tap into my psychology there too.
Absolutely. And there are many big companies that tend to forget that in their urgency to meet KPIs and meet profit targets. They tend to forget that people are the core and the foundation of their success. Now, while making those transitions, how much resistance did you encounter?
From myself or my outside world?
Within you and around you?
Yeah, I suppose when I look back at the first time I left a job to go travel, you might let yourself have some self-doubt, because when I left the drinks company in Dublin, the CEO was like, "Are you really sure about this? That you want to hand in your notice to a really good job, you know, that pays well, and we see that you've potential to grow. You know, you're 25. I think I was 26 at the time." And he said, "If you stay here a few years, you know, you probably have enough money to buy a house." And I could have had a second thought about, is this the right move to go to South America and do voluntary work? But I didn't, because I knew that if I didn't do it then, I might never do it, you know, because later in your 30s, other things start coming to your mind. And I didn't want that hanging over me, that I didn't meet my own KPIs, you know. My parents are very open-minded, and they actually probably made me who I am now, because my dad was in the military and he was in the United Nations. So when I was 10, we lived in Cyprus for 4 months. That had a huge impact on me, massive, because it was my first time probably leaving Ireland, being exposed to another culture, another language, the food. I can still remember the food. And I was 10, you know, you would think it doesn't have that much impact. But we had an amazing 4 months there. And I always say to my parents when I've moved around and they're like worried about me or what will you do there? I say, it was your fault, because you took me to Cyprus then, and it just opened my world and it opened my eyes, you know? So yeah, I think that the thing is not to let other people who challenge your ideas just change your mind. Just try to stay convinced of your own decision and your own goal.
I'd like to backtrack a bit to the time when you went around the whole of South America. Am I right?
Yeah.
Now, tell us more about what motivated you to do that and what did you learn from that experience?
What motivated me was it was easy because I had Spanish. So I said, you know, there's probably no other continent except, you know, North America, Canada. I could have done that, but that wasn't the challenge because it's my native language. It was the only continent where I felt I can go everywhere except Brazil and a couple of other countries and communicate with everybody. And just the richness of each country. I don't think I had met many South Americans by then, even when I lived in Madrid, because now there's a huge population of South Americans in Spain. But, you know, I'm talking about 2009. So that's a long time ago. The motivation was the language, because it was easy. I've always liked travel. I had been to America when I finished my degree. So I had crossed over into Mexico just very briefly. I think a lot of the students do that, you know, to say you put a foot in Mexico. And I just wanted to see more. And again, it's like Spain, we were talking about that earlier. The north is like Ireland and the south is like Africa. Well, for me, it was, the Caribbean in Venezuela and Colombia. And then in the south, I went to Ushuaia in Argentina, and I was on glaciers, What was the second part of your question? Because you asked me what motivated me and
what did you learn from that travel experience?
you know what I learned? That people are really good. Yeah, I learned that you can just trust pretty much everyone. Because I traveled by bus from Venezuela to Colombia. That was probably the most time my mother was concerned. This 26-year-old blonde girl getting on a bus and crossing a border. And, probably at the time we still had a lot of news about the mountain rebels, and she thought I was going to be kidnapped off a bus or something. But I just trusted people. But I also didn't step outside a safety zone that I thought was appropriate for me as a young foreign girl in another continent. So if there was any point I felt unsafe, I would just go back to my hostel. I was sensible. But generally it was just, people are fabulous. I was on my own, except for when I stayed in hostels. You obviously join some groups, maybe for a couple of days, you get talking to people, you do some partying or you do some hikes. But even when I hiked alone to see waterfalls or whatever, I would meet local people. So I remember in Colombia, I met a group of people just out for a trek, and they were like, do you want to come dancing later? We'll do some, like, what's the dancing they do in Colombia? Like, I don't know, the traditional dancing in Cali. And they took me out that night, just from meeting them in a woods that afternoon, And maybe some people would say that was very foolhardy, but I think I always go with my gut instinct as well about people. And I would know whether to be wary and not go on a night out with them. But that's what it taught me, that people are great and the world is safe. I don't know if it's changed now, because as a mother, maybe I would think differently when my sons say that in 10 years' time, Mom, we're going to go backpacking around South America. Maybe I won't be so open. But that was my learning.
So you have discovered different cultures, you have become more accepting, you have become more understanding of diversity. How has all these impacted your work life?
In my work life, I go by the rule that I'm just myself. And I think when you give that off, you have a common understanding that the other person can just be their self as well. And there's no need for any pretenses. Can you hear me? I think you've frozen.
I can, very well.
Okay.
I think you said something important. There is for any pretenses. That is crucial, isn't it?
Yeah. So I work a lot now with German clients. And I think that I'm, probably your typical Irish person, very friendly, outgoing, and I'd invite anybody to my house. I would take them out for dinner. We come from a very small country, there's still less than 5 million of us in the country. And I think because we are a country where people immigrate a lot, we've done that for, probably 250 years. We've been immigrating to other countries and needing to be welcomed and needing to find jobs in those countries, that immediately you're just like that with other people as well. And what I try to get around is so I know there's a culture difference with maybe the German clients. They might be a bit more formal, and I respect that, but I also try to say, look, it's okay. We're all trying to just be on the same page and for the greater good. So if I talk to a leadership team from a company and they're wanting to train up 100 leaders, I'm like, I want the best for them too. Because if I get the best from your people, they'll give the best back to you for your end of year results. I think that's what I take to the table when I work with others. And I think as well, I'm very personal in my emails. I remember personal things about them. So if we chit chat on a Zoom call, but before we get into content, and they tell me about their latest trip or their family, I'll remember things like that, and I say, how are you doing? Are you better? Did you have a good holiday? How are your kids? How's your dog? And I think that's even more necessary nowadays because we're working remotely.
Absolutely.
So I even haven't met some of my colleagues in person still. And I have the opportunity to do that really soon, and I'm so excited about it because we're organizing a huge event down here in Malaga in early February. And we have trainers coming from the UK, from Germany, from South Africa. Some of them I've met maybe just once briefly. Some of them I've never met, and I've probably clocked up 30 hours online sessions with them. And now we're finally going to meet each other in the flesh. So it's important to give that personal side of you than just the work side of you, which is what people might see when you're in the virtual environment. They might only see your work self, but it's forced us to also show the other part of you, because we can't say, let's go out for a drink after work, or shall we do something non-work related at the weekend, because we don't live in the same places anymore. So I think it's important to cross that little bridge of, I also have something behind me, besides my leadership development job. That's why I never use a fake background.
It's very clear that traveling has a very positive impact, not just on your personal life, but on your professional life, and how you deal with people and how you deal with diversity, how you include them. It's so important, isn't it, traveling?
It's so important. And I don't know if everyone takes or has had the same benefit from travel as I've had, because I honestly think about it every day in my job. I think, thank God I went and worked in America, and I know what the people are like from there. Thank God I lived in Maastricht and I was 40 minutes from the German border, so I could go across to Germany, or I could go into Belgium. And I really love antique hunting. I love secondhand markets. And because when I travel, I also don't need to see all the sites. I don't need to go to all the museums. I don't need to eat in the best restaurants. I actually just like walking around the streets. I like going to markets because I get to feel the local life that way.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's had so much benefit for me. I don't know about other people. Like even our honeymoon was in Cuba, but we didn't do the whole, 5-star all-inclusive hotel. We got dirty and we just rented our own car. That was an experience because we didn't know that the roads are not paved most of the time in Cuba. We rented our own car. We stayed in Airbnbs because it allowed us to talk to the people. So there's a lot of different ways you can travel, but for me, it's been really, the reason has been to get to know the people from that country, if possible, if the language allows.
Beautiful, beautiful. That you try to get a feel of the authentic life.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever you go, how people live, interact with people, not just the tourist attractions, where you don't get a chance to see how people actually live, interact, how they eat, how they come together. Beautiful. Now, Pamela, what do you tell someone? You have made a lot of transitions, right? You have done this, that. What would you tell someone who is in their 20s, looking for their first job or second job and having a target? I want that job in that company, or I want that position. I am not willing to compromise. It's either that or nothing. What would you say to someone with that mindset?
I think it's a really nice question, because I actually had a similar conversation with my 25-year-old cousin in Ireland at Christmas. And he said to me, "You're living the dream. And I want to live the dream like you. I want to work. I want a remote job. That it has to be a remote job." And I was like, wow, I'm flattered that you think I live the dream. But let me tell you, it's not always greener on the other side. You know, when you're working, he probably thinks it's because I live in Spain, right? But when you're working in Spain and living your regular life, taking your kids to school, you know, the usual rat race goes on. It's not all it's cracked up to be for these young people. I think they think that you're rolling out of bed maybe at 11 because nobody's watching you and you can just work remotely whenever you want. There is a lot of flexibility, and I as a freelancer also know that. And I have a really understanding and cool boss who's like, yeah, if you work better at nighttime, do the hours at nighttime, you know, or do them at the weekends. But you know what he said to me? So I don't know if I'm going to answer your question but I think this is really interesting, a really interesting perspective. He said, "I'm running out of time." He's
Wow.
25. And I didn't want to
Wow.
be, you know, this patronizing granny figure and be like, "Oh, you're so young, you have so much time." And I was like, okay, that's really interesting. How do you think I feel at 39, you know? But I said to him, I had no idea what I wanted to do at 25. And he was like, that gives me so much hope. Because he also did his degree and he started doing internship, I think, to be a teacher, and he decided it wasn't for him. So now he's worked in various, I think, also customer service jobs, and he's been in insurance. I think he's left that and in something else. I'm not sure what he's in now. I said to him, you have plenty of time, but don't make it all about the remote work. You know, find something that you enjoy doing, not because it's remote first. Not a lot of companies are offering remote first roles. It's actually quite challenging to find a job like that, despite the fact that we've had the pandemic and people think it's super easy to work from Spain and work for a US company. It isn't actually, because people are still reluctant to hire you, not knowing you. And it goes back to the trust that people have of, does a virtual interview really cut it? You know, I haven't seen her in person. But I said to him, ask for advice. That was my first tip, because I said, do what I did. I also wasn't sure. And I went into my university. He was like, can I do that? And I was like, of course. You will always be an alumni of your university. So go back to them, because actually their intention, whether they state it or not, you know, on their website, should be that their graduates get jobs, that they feel employable, right? I'm very practical. So this is what I always go back to you. Like, why did you study for 4 years? And now you're not sure. Go back and ask them. He was like, okay, I'm going to do that. And I said, connect with people. So talk to people. Go on LinkedIn. He was like, I don't even have a LinkedIn account. I was like, make one. I will help you. Set up a profile and I will help you to build it. He was like, yeah, but I have no experience. And I was like, you do. It's just about the language you use. I was the same. I had also probably just voluntary experience before I started in the company in Dublin. And, you know, I did the postgrad. And I said, yeah, well, we can word it as such a way, use language to make what you did sound important, because we're all important, no matter what role it is. So like
Absolutely.
somebody who's in customer service, well, you can say sales lead specialist. You know what I mean? It's the same thing, but the language maybe gives you more confidence on your CV or in your LinkedIn profile. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question about somebody with a very specific mindset.
No, you did indirectly. Correct me if I'm wrong. What I understand from your response is, instead of waiting for one specific job that you have fixed in your mind, right? ask for help, network, and I think you didn't say this, but I think you implied this, adapt to different positions so that you can acquire experience.
That was a wonderful summary.
Is that what you meant?
That was perfect. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I guess the last point that you said is don't be afraid to do something, or don't, nothing is below you, in my opinion. I've done everything. I've been a cleaner, I've been a waitress, I have been a cashier. I mean, they were all like summer jobs or, just to keep me going through university. But everybody is important. I actually, I'm going to go off on another tangent now. Let me finish my train of thought first, because that's exactly what I meant. Don't be afraid to do something, because also it might lead to something else. So they might be like, this guy's really good in marketing. Why don't we make him the communications officer? That's actually something that my cousin wants. He wanted to do something in marketing, and he's doing an online course. And he was like, it might not be enough. And I was like, it doesn't matter. I also am a believer that study isn't everything, because some people who just study all their life but never had little jobs, they're not a student of the world either. So you need to be a student of life at the same time as a student of academics.
I love that, Pamela. I love that so much. You need to be a student of life. That sums up everything.
It sounds a bit corny, but you need to
No, it
be,
doesn't.
you need to make yourself worldly in every
Yes,
way. It's not all in the books, and it's not all passing the exams. I was a really good student, but when I came to Spain on Erasmus, I couldn't say a word, and I was getting A's in all my exams in Spain in Spanish. And I came here, I got on the bus, I was like, I don't know how to ask for a ticket. Because you need the experience, you need to put yourself in the environment, you know. And what I was going to say related to that is I started watching a wonderful series on Netflix by Michelle and Barack Obama, actually, which is called Working, What We Do All Day. And it does exactly what I was saying. It interviews people who are, cleaners in hotels in New York, people who are home aides in another, like, I think it was a quite rural part of some other state. And so there's not many job opportunities for them, or people who are just stocking shelves in a supermarket. Their point is that without all of those people, none of the rest of us can work anyway. So everybody's role is important. Everybody is
absolutely.
a stepping stone.
Absolutely.
Really nice if
Nothing.
you haven't seen it.
Sorry, what did you
It's a
say?
really nice series if you haven't seen it.
Well, I haven't seen it, but that brings to mind an experience from my past. There was once in my office building, the cleaners were not available. I'm not sure why. I can't remember why, but there was no one to take out the garbage uh, all over the building. Just one day. One day. And I cannot begin to describe how horrifying that experience was. It was such an unpleasant experience. Of course, I knew I have always respected everyone. It doesn't make a difference to me whether you're a cleaner or not. Everyone deserves respect. But the importance of the cleaner, you cannot work if they don't do their job.
Yeah,
You just can't. They are so important. And that brings me back to what you were describing. Nothing is for nothing, meaning whatever experience you acquire as a waitress, as a cashier, whatever it may be, you have no idea. You never know how it will contribute to your career in the future. The skills are transferable.
absolutely. Yeah, if you're not good with people, when those skills you will get from any type of job, any walk of life, if you're not good with people, you're probably not on a great career path.
Well said. Well said. Now, Your present job is a leadership development specialist, right? Did you always know that this is what you want to do? Or how did you come to this point?
I absolutely did not know. And I think I
I
think
love that.
that's become clear in our conversation up till now. I did not know, but it's been very enjoyable for me the last 6 years to realize that my degree was not a waste of time, because I studied psychology. I studied psychological studies with Spanish. And initially, I just used my Spanish in a lot of my other jobs. And then when I joined this company, as I got more involved in the content part and the designing of leadership programs, I started tapping more into my psychological study side of things. So it kind of came full circle without meaning to. Yeah, I definitely didn't know this was the job for me, but I absolutely love that I get to meet so many people who need to learn because their companies make them go on these programs, or because they want to learn. You know, we've done a program. We're in the second part of a leadership program where the first year was mandatory modules. And, you know, everybody has to attend because the regional manager is kind of hanging over them and saying, you know, we need to participate in this. And then the second year of the program was just elective modules. And the participants are almost running the sessions themselves because they're so into the topics now, and because that is exactly what you want. You want transfer learning, because maybe the company only has a budget for 70 leaders, but the company has 20,000 employees, right? So those 70 leaders need to trickle down the learning to the other levels. So we know we did our job right if they can transfer the learning to their teams. And it's so powerful when you see a session of 6 to 10 people being, and they're like, no, you know what, we will just, we're happy that you're in the background and we will work it out ourselves. So we're still facilitating, but they're very proactive, and they're like, you know what, this is more suitable to our strategy actually for 2025, or this is going to be a really hot topic for us up until 2030. Would you mind if we develop that one with your help? And you're like, absolutely, because it makes more sense, no?
Yeah.
I'm not going to sell umbrellas to the people here in the Costa del Sol when it's blue skies 350 days of the year. You know?
Exactly. What are the challenges that you encounter in your present job?
In my present job, you know what? Last year was quite challenging for me because I think I got remote tired. I found it really hard to keep my focus. I'm very motivated because I just have very good habits. I like routine. And, you know, I had a personal trainer once who said to me, it's not about motivation, it's about habits. So even if you don't want to train one day, like as in physically train, CrossFit and things like this, you'll go because it's a habit. Like we brush our teeth every day, you know? But I started letting my habits drop with work and just losing my focus a bit. Because I work from a home office, you know, you get distracted by anything when you're in that mode, and you're like, oh, I'll hang up the washing. I'll go and sweep the terrace because I couldn't find my focus. I don't know, was it just the 6 years working remotely and it took a little toll on me? And I did a lot of reflection in the month of December, like, why was that happening to me? I listened to a lot of podcasts, both leadership ones for work and also just personal development ones. I particularly love Mel Robbins. I don't know if you've heard of her.
I have.
And she really motivated me to reflect on why there were so many challenges for me last year, and then just how to address them. So far, I think we're only the 20th of January. It's been a really good month. And I'm really focused, and I got my mojo back. I think it's also an added benefit that I have this physical event happening 20 minutes from me in February with 400 people. So, you know, my boss is coming down here from the UK. My colleagues are coming from all over. The client is bringing people from 30 different countries, and we're all convening in a hotel 20 minutes from where I live. So I'm getting to have the physical side of people again, which is really nice. So I guess that's keeping me going. You know, it was a big motivator to start the new year. I went to the venue where we're going to hold the conference yesterday and met the staff. It was so invigorating to be with people, to hug them and kiss them, because we do that in Spain with strangers, you know. You can kiss people even if they're, you know, like you're working with them. It's not uncomfortable. And that was really special. So that was a challenge for me, I think, last year, the remote work. But you know what? Again, it goes back to, it made me empathize with the people who we train, who have to leave their regular work and go on a workshop with us for 3.5 hours. And they're probably like, oh my God, I'm going to have so many emails in my inbox when I finish this workshop, or I'm missing this client meeting because I'm supposed to be in this mandatory module. It makes me empathize with how hard it might be for them to do that type of learning. And we are still getting the feedback from our participants that they want more face-to-face, that nothing replaces the face-to-face. So
Absolutely.
because I had that challenge, now I am also on the same page as my participants when they express frustration like that.
You know, you brought up something so important, which is, I believe, often overlooked, becoming remote tired.
Yeah.
You know, I tend to get tired as well when everything is remote.
Mm-hmm.
I can't put my finger on what exactly, but you become very drained, you know,
Yeah.
drained of energy. It's all remote. It's not like meeting one to one
Mm,
directly. Yeah.
exactly.
So that's a very important point.
Mm.
Do something that that involves physical human interaction, and then you get some recharging, and then continue with your remote work. The bottom
And you
line
know,
is,
well, also on that point, it's not possible for everybody to do that. So we're trying to bring into a lot of our leadership programs as well pieces on well-being,
yeah,
because it's holistic. You know, we are saying to them things like, are you looking after your health? Are you going training? Are you going out for a walk? Are you getting fresh air? Are you at your desk all day with like fake lighting?
yeah,
You know, even if you're in Ireland or I don't know, the north of Scotland where it might be raining and very dark in the winter, you need to get outside. Like, you sometimes need to tell them things like you would to your own kids if you have kids, like I do, like go out and jump on the trampoline because you need to offload some physical energy too. And we're animals. We need to move.
yeah,
I cannot stress enough how much movement is important. I don't mind if you don't go to the gym and you don't lift weights, but you need to move. Just you need to walk. And if you're not even having a commute, you know, a commute traditionally allowed us to drive to a place or cycle to a place, park your car, walk to your office. A lot of people don't even have that. So I'm like, just walk around your house with your cup of coffee and listen to the birds or put in a podcast, you know? So I think that it's up to us as well as leadership specialists to
yeah.
involve those little nuggets of health and well-being so that the learning can be absorbed when the person feels well, you know?
Absolutely. You have to be fine, well, and happy before you can do anything productive.
Mm.
Yeah, and you answered my question without me asking. How do you stay motivated? Very beautifully, right? So a
Okay.
recap would be to disconnect and recharge, and to listen to podcasts. Did I miss out anything?
I mean, I think social networking as well is important. So you might not have your colleagues, but having a good circle of friends, if that's possible for you, you know, I know there's all types of personalities. I'm surprisingly extrovert, introvert, because I love being with people, but I need to recharge and be alone and like read a book or just walk alone and have a podcast. But I have an amazing group of friends here. I've been lucky enough that in any country I've lived in, I have worked on building myself a good group of friends because I don't have family to fall back on. I do tend to like steer towards an expat friendship group because we have immediately something in common, you know, so you're not starting from scratch because, you know, first of all, you're all foreign in another country, you all speak in a second language, you're all struggling with maybe paperwork in this country. For me, the friendship group is really important as well. That's very motivating, you know. I know I can keep my job going between Germany and the UK or wherever else we have clients, but you need to have a base where you're based, working remotely. And something that has happened with people since the pandemic, because I see it myself with my husband and he admits it, people got lazy because you don't even have to go to meetings. You don't have to go out to appointments. You don't have to meet anyone. And he says to me, I'm actually lazy to just plan a beer with somebody. I just stay at home and drink the beer. And I don't have that, but I see that other people might have it, you know, because I love planning. That's part of my job. I love events. So I do that socially as well with my group of friends and personally. But I recognize, because he shares that with me, okay, so maybe some of our employees are also the same. And from one month to the next, they might not be meeting many people. You know, as a mother, you have the opportunity to go and meet people because you're doing a school run or a school pickup or you're taking them to football, you know. But I've many friends who don't have kids, and I'm like, wow, if they worked remotely and they weren't careful, they might never leave their room, you know.
Yeah, so viewers, please, if you haven't left your room, please do so.
Close this podcast right now and go outside.
What's your definition of owning your career, Pamela?
Oh, that's a hard one. And I should have been prepared for that because I think you mentioned it might be a question. Owning your career, being okay with mistakes, being okay with asking for help.
Very important.
Or instead of asking for help, being okay with just saying, I don't know. That's actually really powerful.
Even more important.
And I don't believe in bluffing. Do you understand that word? Like, I don't want to call a bluff because I think that is the worst thing.
We use bluff a lot in Asia, so bluffing, yes.
Yeah, I just hate that. And I would hate for myself to be bluffing somebody and then they're like saying, what? She doesn't seem like she has a clue about that, you know? Just be honest. And even in a training environment, if I don't know the answer, I'll say, you know what? I need to look that up, but I'll send you an email afterwards. Like, don't bluff and just say you don't know. And people, that's also, again, going back to humanizing yourself. So owning your career is staying human, staying true. And there's a lot of talk about like vulnerability nowadays and authenticity. There may be fancy words for just saying like, just be honest, like just be okay with who you are and be okay with your audience and who you work with and be okay with saying, I need you to teach me that actually. I could do with some tips.
Beautiful. Very simple, but very necessary. And you know, people are so afraid to speak up and just say, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
we
often.
Yeah.
3 words, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
The conditioning by society is amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, Pamela, you've been talking about your career journey for the past 1 hour or so. How do you feel talking about what all that you have done and all the transitions you have made?
I feel like it was a fast hour. I thought we were going to have 30 minutes or 40 minutes max. So I'm surprised that it says, 59 minutes up there. I feel like I feel very traveled, because sometimes I think you forget your own journey when it, happened over such a long period of time. I feel very whole because I've had the opportunity to speak about, the path from studying as a 20-year-old to finishing now at nearly, I'll be 40 this year. So a 20-year cycle.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of the book 4,000 Weeks.
I've
That's
heard of
based,
it, but I've not read it yet.
I haven't read it either. It's on my list, but it's based on the fact that we're probably going to live for like 4,000 weeks. And when it's said to you in weeks terms, it's like, oh my God, that seems so little. So I worked out that I'm already over the halfway mark. And I need to be grateful for what I've done. I think actually talking about my experience, it makes me grateful that I had open parents, an open family. I come from, it was a, standard middle class background, but actually, because when you travel and you meet people who didn't have that, you realize that you actually had a very privileged upbringing and background. I wouldn't say that we were rich or anything like that, because my parents worked hard, state jobs, and they saved their money. But it was privileged because I got a good education, and that teaches you discipline, if nothing else. I said earlier that having a degree isn't the be all and end all, but when you study, you get discipline, and that does help you in the work environment. So I think reflecting on my experience showed that I tick those boxes.
So powerfully described. I love your description of, how you feel talking about your career journey, and gratitude seems to be the highlight. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Gratitude is so important, right? Because looking back at how far you have traveled, there's so much to be grateful for.
Yeah, there is. And in the kind of, we were talking about the rat race earlier, in the everyday, pace of life and doing your job, getting your kids out the door, making your dinners, and, all that kind of stuff, you can kind of forget and become a little bit ungrateful at times. And I don't keep a gratitude journal or anything like that. I'm not that good. But it's good to remind yourself of those positive experiences that you have. This is something that I reflected on in December as well. And a friend said to me recently, we were talking about a party we had last June, and she was like, oh, I forgot that. And I was like, what? That was so fun. We have this celebration on the beach in Spain. It's called San Juan. I think it's the 23rd of June. The temperature is amazing because it's not too hot. The nights are starting to be really long. We were all down there on the beach with our family. People make fires. You bring like picnic and some drinks, and the kids are there, the adults are there. And I was like, wow, how did you forget that? That was such a powerful experience. And she was like, yeah, I need to reflect more on the good things that we do. It's good to remind yourself from time to time.
Lovely. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you. And I don't know, I'm just fascinated by all the experiences you've described thus far.
Thank you, Mira.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming on board. Now, before we close, is there anything you would like to tell our viewers?
I think just be kind to yourself and say, I don't know.
Okay. Be kind to yourself, viewers. Be kind to yourself. And don't be afraid to say, I don't know. I'm telling myself as well. We have to remind ourselves that it's okay not to know everything. Pamela, I loved chatting with you.
Thank you, Mira.
And,
Me too.
I love your descriptions. I love your deductions from the experiences. I love how you put it all together. It's so beautiful and powerful. Thank you so much for sharing your career journey.
You're welcome.
And
Thanks for the invite.
You're very welcome. And I am sure that whoever watches this live stream or subsequently the recording is going to gain lots of stuff from what you have to say, especially the younger generation.
I hope so.
Thank you so much. Viewers, thank you for joining us. Till we meet again for the next episode of Career Conversations, have a wonderful weekend. Bye.
Have a good weekend.